If you watched the last video on why gardens attract pests, you already understand the system. Companions confuse, habitat supports predators, soil builds resilience, and trap crops redirect pressure. But understanding the concept and knowing exactly how to lay out your beds are two different things. Most gardeners agree with pest-resistant design in theory. Then they step outside, look at their raised beds, and realize they have no idea where to place anything. So today I am going to make this practical. 3 layout rules: clear placement, clear spacing, and one mistake at the end that can undo everything even if you follow the first 3 perfectly. The goal is not to eliminate every insect. The goal is to design a layout that prevents small pest populations from turning into infestations, because once an outbreak starts, you are reacting. Layout decides whether you react or harvest. Rule 1 is break every crop row. Long, in uninterrupted rows of one plant act like scent highways for pests. Insects do not randomly stumble onto your tomatoes. They follow chemical signals. When 12 tomatoes are planted in a straight line, those signals stack, so you break the corridor. For tomatoes, plant 3 to 4 together, then insert a basil plant 8 to 10 inches from the stems. Repeat down the row. For peppers, alternate with onions or garlic every 12 to 14 inches. For brassicas, tuck dill or cilantro every 12 inches. For cucumbers and squash, interplant radishes and nasturtiums. For beans, stagger marigolds every 18 to 24 inches. Marigold roots suppress nematodes below the surface, while the flower scent confuses bean beetles above it. The rule is simple. Companions must be inside the row, not in a separate herb bed across the yard. Now picture a standard 4x8 raised bed. Instead of 8 tomatoes in 2 straight lines, you plant 3 tomatoes. Insert a basil, 3 more tomatoes, another basil. Along the front edge, a strip of low alyssum. At the back, a staggered line of dill. That bed is no longer a monoculture, it is layered. The companions do not reduce your vegetable yield the way you might expect. Basil sits below the tomato canopy. Dill benefits the soil and attracts pollinators. You are filling gaps that were doing nothing anyway. I resisted this for a while because it looked disorganized. But the rows that looked messiest in May were the ones I stopped worrying about by July. Rule 2 is defend the perimeter. Most infestations begin at the edges of your garden, not the center. Edges dry faster, fluctuate more in temperature, and are the first point of contact for incoming pests. On the outer edge, plant a continuous line of nasturtiums spaced 6 to 8 inches apart. Aphids, flea beetles, and whiteflies are often more attracted to nasturtiums than your vegetables. They land there first. Just inside that ring, create a narrow insectary strip, 12 to 24 inches wide, using sweet alyssum in front and dill or yarrow spaced 10 to 12 inches apart behind it. Add 2 to 3 inches of mulch across the entire garden interior to stabilize moisture and provide shelter for ground-dwelling predators. The total width of this perimeter border is roughly 2 to 3 feet. That sounds like lost growing space. But what you give up in square footage, you gain in reduced pest pressure across the entire interior. The first season, you may notice modest improvement. By the second season, once beneficial insects overwinter and return early, the difference becomes significant. You stop seeing explosive outbreaks because incoming pressure gets absorbed at the border before it reaches your main crops. When I installed this border, I stopped finding hornworms on my tomatoes entirely by the second season. Not because hornworms disappeared from the area, because parasitic wasps from the yarrow strip were finding them before I did. If you want the companion spacing and insectary setup in a printable format, I have put a checklist in the description. Rule 3 is build airflow into the interior. Pest pressure is rarely just insects. It is also fungal stress. And here is the connection most people miss. Fungal weakened plants emit stronger stress signals, which attract opportunistic insects. What starts as a spacing problem in May becomes a fungal problem in June and an insect problem in July. The cascade compounds. Spacing prevents all 3 stages. Take the spacing on the seed packet and add about 20%. Tomatoes that suggest 24 inches get closer to 30. Squash at 3 feet gets closer to 4. That extra room allows leaves to dry faster after rain and keeps plants structurally stronger through summer. Orient rows so prevailing wind passes through them. In most of the U.S., that means running rows roughly north to south. If you are in humid zones 7 through 9, this rule matters even more. Tight spacing in June often turns into blight in July and insect pressure in August. Designed for the worst week of summer, not the best week of spring. Here is what this looks like in practice. Garden A is clean and symmetrical. Straight rows, tight spacing, no border, bare soil pathways. In May, it looks perfect. By late June, aphids cluster on the edge plants, fungal spots appear, the gardener sprays, predators decline, pressure increases. By August, they are spending more time treating problems than harvesting. Garden B is slightly less tidy, crops are clustered with companions, borders are layered, spacing is generous, mulch covers the pathways. Small pest populations exist, that is normal and necessary as food for beneficials, but they never escalate. By mid-season, Garden B looks healthier not because pests never arrived, but because the layout never allowed them to explode. The only difference was planning, and that planning happened once in February before a single seed went in the ground. And here is the mistake that cancels everything. You can follow all 3 rules and still struggle if the area directly outside your garden is unmanaged. Tall weeds, brush piles, or last year's crop debris within 10 to 15 feet of your beds act as staging areas where pests build populations before migrating in. If you cleaned inside the garden but left the perimeter wild, you built a strong front door and left the back gate open. Maintain a simple buffer zone, mowed, mulched, or cleared around the exterior. Remove spent crop debris in fall rather than leaving it to overwinter. That debris is where next spring's first pest generation is sheltering right now. Not sterile, just managed. Structure does not end at the raised bed edge. The full layout. Crops broken into clusters with companions inside each row. A perimeter ring of trap crops backed by a flowering insectary strip. Spacing increased 20% with rows oriented for airflow, a managed buffer around the exterior, 4 structural decisions made before planting begins, no sprays, no emergency reactions, just placement. Once this establishes, especially by the second season, pest pressure becomes manageable instead of overwhelming. Infestations do not start with insects, they start with layout. And layout is something you control long before the first leaf is damaged. If you are redesigning beds now, watch the mulch strategy video next. It strengthens the predator habitat and moisture stability this layout depends on.